You won't believe how the HOA destroyed my sister's wheelchair ramp, only to realize she's a feared governor ready to destroy. Welcome to Tales Kingdom. Before we dive in, hit the like button and subscribe so we can keep bringing you incredible stories like this. Now let's get started. Living in the heart of an upscale suburban neighborhood, my sister, Governor Lisa Hartman, had always been a fighter. She wasn't just any politician. She was a powerhouse, known for her sharp legal mind and relentless pursuit of justice. However, to the local Homeowners Association (HOA), she was just another resident, albeit one they barely saw due to her demanding schedule. When Lisa suffered a spinal injury in a tragic car accident, she had to rely on a wheelchair to get around. To maintain her independence, she had a custom-built wheelchair ramp installed at her home. It was sleek, well-designed, and complied with all ADA regulations. Unfortunately, the HOA saw it as an eyesore. Without any formal warning, they deemed it a violation of the neighborhood's aesthetic guidelines and ordered its removal. Lisa was out of town on official business when it happened, leaving me to witness the disaster unfold. One morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery roaring outside. I rushed out and, to my horror, saw a bulldozer crushing the ramp into rubble. The HOA president, a smug man named Richard Holloway, stood by with his arms crossed, watching with satisfaction. When I confronted him, he dismissed me coldly, stating that unsanctioned structures had no place in his community. I tried to explain that my sister needed the ramp for basic mobility, but he waved me off, citing bylaws and regulations, completely oblivious to who Lisa really was. He had no idea that the woman he had just wronged wasn't just a resident. She was a feared and highly influential governor, with the power to make his life a legal nightmare. As I stood there fuming, I knew one thing for certain. Lisa was going to make them regret this. Lisa returned home that evening, utterly exhausted from a week of back-to-back legislative meetings. She was eager to finally relax in her own home, only to be greeted by a horrifying sight. Her wheelchair ramp was gone. The once smooth entrance had been reduced to a pile of shattered wood and debris. Her exhaustion was instantly replaced with cold fury. I barely had time to explain what had happened before her expression hardened into something I had seen many times before, her battle face. Lisa was known for her unshakable composure. But this was personal. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, then turned to me with a voice so sharp it could cut glass. "Give me everything you know. Names, times, any documentation." I handed her my phone, where I had filmed the entire demolition, and she quickly scrolled through the footage, her grip tightening with each second. Her sharp legal mind was already dissecting every violation, every infraction, and every possible lawsuit she could unleash on the HOA. Then, without another word, she pulled out her own phone and made a call. Not to a lawyer. No, Lisa didn't need one. She was the law. Instead, she dialed the state's ADA Compliance Board, the Office of Civil Rights, and just for good measure, a couple of journalists who had been dying for an exclusive on the governor's personal battles. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing with the sight of black SUVs rolling into the community, their tinted windows reflecting the early sunlight. Out stepped a mix of state investigators, city officials, and reporters, all ready to witness what was about to unfold. Lisa, dressed in a sharp navy blue blazer, rolled out onto her front porch, her presence commanding absolute silence. Richard Holloway, the HOA president, had been completely blindsided. He had expected some angry phone calls, maybe a heated meeting, but he was woefully unprepared. As Lisa introduced herself, his face drained of color. It was clear he had just realized the magnitude of his mistake. "Mr. Holloway," Lisa began, her voice smooth but laced with authority, "it has come to my attention that you authorized the illegal destruction of a federally protected accessibility structure." She gestured toward the pile of debris that used to be her wheelchair ramp. "Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, your actions are not only unethical, but also punishable by law." The gathered crowd, residents, reporters, even a few of the HOA's own board members, watched in stunned silence as she laid out every legal violation committed under his watch. The HOA had not issued a proper warning, They had failed to comply with state and federal accessibility laws, and worst of all, they had willfully destroyed a necessary medical accommodation. As Lisa continued her takedown, a state investigator approached Richard with a clipboard. "Mr. Holloway," the man said, flipping a page, "due to multiple ADA violations and unlawful destruction of property, you and your HOA board will be facing an official state inquiry. You may want to contact legal counsel." Richard, now visibly sweating, stammered in protest, but Lisa wasn't done. "You didn't just demolish a ramp," she said, her voice cutting through his excuses. "You bulldozed over someone's rights. You treated my home, my accessibility, as a mere inconvenience. And for that, you will be held accountable." The crowd erupted into murmurs. Neighbors who had previously been indifferent now whispered among themselves, realizing just how deep the HOA had buried itself. The reporters took frantic notes, some already typing out headlines on their phones. It was no longer just a neighborhood dispute. It was about to become a statewide scandal. Lisa wasn't just here to win a personal battle. She was here to set an example. And as Richard Holloway stood there, stunned and humiliated, he began to understand that he hadn't just picked a fight with a homeowner. He had picked a fight with the wrong governor. The fallout from Lisa's takedown of the HOA was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, the scandal had spread like wildfire across news stations, online articles, and social media. Headlines blared: "HOA bulldozes governor's wheelchair ramp. Now facing legal consequences. Neighborhood tyrants violate ADA laws. Governor strikes back." And my personal favorite, HOA president learns the hard way: "Don't mess with Lisa Hartman." News crews set up camp outside our neighborhood, eager to capture footage of the once powerful HOA board members now scrambling to save face. Richard Holloway, the smug HOA president who had so arrogantly dismissed my warnings, had gone completely silent. His bravado had evaporated the moment the state investigation was officially launched, and now he was desperately trying to avoid the reporters knocking on his door. But there was no escaping what Lisa had set into motion. Lisa's legal team wasted no time filing complaints with multiple government agencies. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, violation alone carried hefty fines. But Lisa wasn't just looking for compensation. She wanted systemic change. She demanded a full audit of the HOA's practices, suspecting that this wasn't the first time they had trampled over residents' rights. Sure enough, as investigators began digging, they unearthed a pattern of discrimination and abuse of power. The HOA had a long history of harassing homeowners, fining people for minor infractions, and enforcing absurd rules that disproportionately targeted elderly and disabled residents. One elderly veteran had been fined thousands of dollars for installing a railing on his front steps. Another family had been forced to remove a sensory-friendly playset for their autistic child because it didn't fit the community aesthetic. Now, with the spotlight on them, all of these past injustices were coming to light. Lisa wasn't content with just exposing them. She wanted to make sure no HOA in the state could ever pull something like this again. She introduced a new piece of legislation, dubbed the Hartman Act, aimed at strengthening protections for homeowners with disabilities and imposing harsher penalties on HOAs that violated ADA laws. The bill gained massive public support, fueled by outrage over Lisa's case. Lawmakers who had previously ignored HOA abuses were now eager to be on the right side of history. Within weeks, the bill was fast-tracked for a vote, and by the end of the month, it passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. The HOA had unknowingly sparked a legal movement that would reshape housing regulations across the state. Meanwhile, back in our neighborhood, the HOA was in full meltdown mode. Facing lawsuits, government fines, and a complete loss of credibility, their power crumbled. Richard Holloway was forced to resign in disgrace, his reputation permanently ruined. The remaining board members, desperate to distance themselves from the disaster, either stepped down or begged Lisa for leniency. But Lisa wasn't interested in their apologies. Instead, she made sure that the HOA's bank accounts were drained, paying for the fines, legal fees, and, most importantly, the reconstruction of her wheelchair ramp. This time, it wasn't just a simple wooden ramp. Oh no! Lisa had it rebuilt in grand style, state-of-the-art, sleek, with reinforced steel rails and an elegant design that made it the most impressive structure in the entire neighborhood. And, just to rub salt in the wound, she had a plaque installed at the base of the ramp that read, "Built in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, because some people need a reminder." The best part? The HOA was legally required to maintain it. Forever. In the end, the HOA had tried to destroy something they saw as an inconvenience, but all they had done was dig their own grave. Lisa had turned their petty tyranny into a full-scale legal revolution, one that would protect homeowners for years to come. As we sat on her porch one evening, watching the last of the news crews pack up, Lisa sipped her tea with a satisfied smile. "Well," she said, glancing at the newly rebuilt ramp, "I'd say that went well." I couldn't help but laugh. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." She smirked. "Smart choice." And with that, the chapter was closed. The HOA had been defeated, the laws had been changed, and Lisa had proven, once again, that she was a force to be reckoned with.